What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the TCO Fantasy Football Show. Whoop! Today is our free agency recap episode. We're going to be going over what's happened this week because so much has happened. We're going to start off with the free agency signings, and then we're going to get into a couple of these really big trades that happened. And we got a lot to talk about. Let's get right on into it. Okay, so I'm not really going to talk about these guys in any particular order. I kind of just have a list here of who signed for what amount of money and where, and so I'm kind of just going to go down my list. And the top of my list is a wide receiver the Jags signed. It is Christian Kirk. It was a 4-year, $72 million deal, $37 million guaranteed. And I think they overpaid for a wide receiver 3. This guy, was Christian Kirk even the wide receiver 2 on the Cardinals? I think he was the wide receiver 3. I think AJ Green and D-Hop were both better than him. And maybe you could even put Zach Ertz better than him too. But nonetheless, the Jags signed him for a hefty sum of money. And I guess Trevor Lawrence has somewhat of a wide receiver to throw to now. I mean, I don't know what really the difference is between Marvin Jones and Christian Kirk. I feel like it's almost the same thing at that point. But for fantasy football purposes, I think the most we can ever get out of Christian Kirk is high-end, not even high-end, low-end wide receiver 2. High-end wide receiver 2 would be above and beyond the stars for Christian Kirk, but I doubt that that's going to happen. I think he's going to be a low-end wide receiver 2 at best. At best. He'll probably end up being a middle-of-the-pack wide receiver 3, just like Marvin Jones was this past year. And so I don't think this is that crazy of a signing for Dynasty fantasy football or regular fantasy football, any fantasy football for that matter. And I'm basically in the same position I was before on Christian Kirk. Next up, we have someone who is way more fantasy relevant. It just happened yesterday, so you can clearly tell I'm not doing these in order. But this just happened yesterday. Allen Robinson is signing with the Rams on a 3-year, $46.5 million deal, $30 million guaranteed. And this is an interesting trade because it puts me in such a weird situation here. This trade, I saw this happen, and I thought it made no sense. I thought Allen Robinson was for sure going to go to whatever team DeShaun Watson got traded to. Clearly, I was wrong. And what does this mean for the rest of the pass catchers in Los Angeles? Does OBJ leave now? I guess. They're talking about trading Robert Woods. Maybe they trade Robert Woods and keep OBJ, Allen Robinson, and Cooper Kupp. They also have Van Jefferson back there. I don't really know what's going on with that organization. I understand that OBJ isn't going to come back till the middle of November, but I don't know. I don't quite get. I wasn't expecting this one. I was not expecting this one, but it will be interesting to see what Allen Robinson is going to do next to Cooper Kupp, because Cooper Kupp was the wide receiver 1 last year. He had a historic season, and Allen Robinson had a pretty historic season a couple years ago where he was a top 5 wide receiver. And I don't know. I'm thinking that this is good for him, yet bad for him. The Rams really revived OBJ's career, and I think they're going to probably do the same thing with Allen Robinson. I'm betting on the fact that the talent is still there with him, and I think he's going to be a high-end wide receiver 2, a low-end wide receiver 1 in this system, depending on whether or not Robert Woods or OBJ stay, and also Van Jefferson. I don't count Van Jefferson now. I like Van Jefferson. And I didn't like this. I just didn't like it. I wasn't expecting it, and I didn't like it. But I'm going to say Allen Robinson's probably going to be a wide receiver 2 for me this upcoming season. And, yeah, that's where I'm going to keep him. Okay, so this next one I found very interesting. I really like this move, and it is Russell Gage to the Tampa Bay Bucks on a 3-year, $30 million deal. I believe it is $15 million guaranteed at the signing. And I love this deal for Russell Gage. This is great for him, especially now that Tom Brady's back. Never got to talk about that in a video. That's also pretty crazy. I was talking about before how Chris Godwin was going to take a huge hit, and now everything's worked out. Tom Brady's back. Woohoo, go team. But I love the fact that Russell Gage is here because he's going to assume that Chris Godwin role until Chris Godwin gets back. And so we might be seeing Russell Gage be a low-end wide receiver 1. Yes, I am saying it, a low-end wide receiver 1 until mid-November, mid-November probably. That'll probably be about the time Chris Godwin comes back. And It's an interesting one because you could probably get him in the 7th round, 8th round of your fantasy drafts because who's Russell Gage? Nobody likes Russell Gage. He turned up a little bit at the end of the year last year, but in what type of system? There was nobody there. There was nobody else to catch the ball, so Russell Gage had to catch the ball. But this is really good. I like this one a lot. And if you're sitting there in the 7th round and Russell Gage is on the board, he is somebody you got to take. He is somebody I'm going to take because you have a guaranteed, like at the very worst, a low-end wide receiver 2 or a mid wide receiver 2 till week 8, week 9. And that is somebody who I could throw at my flex in a pinch, and that is somebody I want on my team. So another small fantasy football trade that happened that it really doesn't have any like real NFL value, but it has a lot of fantasy football value, is Cedric Wilson to the Dolphins on a 3-year, $22 million contract, 12.7 guaranteed at the signing, and this means nothing for Cedric Wilson. I think Cedric Wilson's going to be bad. I don't expect anything. He's got Tua throwing to him in this offense. But this is great news for Jalen Waddle. He has somebody on the field who isn't going to take a lot of catches from him, but he's going to take a lot of the coverage away from him, leaving him more open, and this just helps him. Jalen Waddle is already in a great situation here where he could possibly be a top 10 wide receiver next year, and this is just helping him out more. It's another plus, another bonus. And so the fact that Cedric Wilson, went to the Dolphins isn't a crazy deal in itself, but it is crazy for Jalen Waddle because this will be another thing that helps his stock. So the next signing is one that I absolutely love when I shouldn't love it at all. It looks horrible on paper. It is Mitchell Trubisky to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I love this. Not trade. It was a signing, not a trade. But I love this signing. I love it. I love it. And I shouldn't love it at all. It's ugly. It's horrible. It's horrific. But I think Mitchell Trubisky is a significant upgrade from Big Ben. Big Ben was bad. Big Ben was so bad last year. This guy couldn't hit anybody. All he did was chuck the ball up in the air and throw slants. Mitchell Trubisky can do that same thing and a little bit more. You got to remember that this guy had horrible coaching in Chicago and still took them to the first round of the playoffs, and then they left him to die. I don't get it. Makes no sense. But I think Mitchell Trubisky is somebody who deserved a second chance. We did it with Sam Darnold last year, and it didn't work, but I think Mitchell Trubisky is the quarterback that can revive his career here in Pittsburgh. I think that time that he spent as the backup behind Josh Allen with Brian Daboll, I think that time might have helped him significantly, and I think he's going to really work out in this system. And I cannot wait to see him be the starter week 1 over big old Mason Rudolph, because I don't like Mason Rudolph. And I don't think the Steelers are going to even draft a quarterback now. And I love it. I love it. Give Mitchell Trubisky to the Steelers, and I think he is going to be a top 20 quarterback. Maybe, no, I'm not going to say top 15. That's a little pushing it. But I think he's going to be better than guys like Tua, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, who else is in that range? Baker Mayfield, Carson Wentz, those type of guys. I think Mitchell Trubisky is going to fall into that range, and I think he's going to be better than them by not a long shot, actually. Not a long shot, but he is going to be better than them. He's going to be better than them. That is a hot take I have for next season for Big Mitch. So for the next signing, I'm going to talk about two guys together. It is Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert. That's all I gotta say, because it was Chase Edmonds in the beginning all by himself, and I was super excited. If you guys checked out my TikTok, I was really excited for it. I am a Miami Dolphins fan. And I thought, okay, Chase Edmonds is going to get 14 carries a game, 4 catches. This guy's going to be a great high-end RB2. Maybe he makes that jump because of some injuries into the RB1 category, and he's going to be great, fantastic. I love it. But now Raheem Mostert's there, which isn't that big of a deal because, let's be honest here, Raheem Mostert's probably going to get injured within the first 2 weeks. It's happened the past 2 years in a row. The guy just runs a little bit too hard, I guess. And he's a little old. I think he's like 29, 30 now. And he's an older dude, so maybe he won't play that big of a role. But we saw this a couple years ago with Frank Gore, and I think it was Kenyon Drake. And it might be that same exact type of situation where they just split it 50-50, and there isn't enough work for the both of them to make them any fantasy relevant. Maybe Chase Edmonds has that receiving upside, so maybe he's a low-end RB2 like he was before. Somebody who, if he doesn't get a touchdown, he gets you 7 to 8 points. And if he does get a touchdown, he gets you 13 to 14 at the most. And I don't know. I don't see this really working out too well for either of them. But it's whatever. I mean, Chase Edmonds is going to be 26 by the start of the season. And I guess you could draft these guys in the 7th, 8th round of your draft, and maybe on the hopes that Raheem Mostert or somebody in that backfield gets, I don't want to say that. I don't really want to say that because it is kind of mean, but on the hopes that somebody does get hurt. And there ain't much here for you guys for fantasy football purposes. So I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm going to just go down the list and tell you quickly what I think about some of these smaller signings. And the first one we got here is C.J. Uzomah to the Jets. This is good. I kind of like this for C.J. Uzomah's value. I think he becomes a high-end tight end 2. High-end tight end 2 at best. I think that's good. Maybe a late-round flyer. Nothing crazy. We got Zay Jones to the Jags. Another one that's not that crazy. Another low-end wide receiver 3, middle-of-the-pack wide receiver 3. Maybe he outworks these other people there because Derek Carr did say Zay Jones was a hard worker. And so maybe he outworks these guys and it becomes a good situation for him. But at the moment, I don't even think you're going to draft him. And next up, we have Tyler Conklin also to the Jets. Him and C.J. Uzomah are the same value. Maybe I didn't even know that Tyler Conklin signed with the Jets, to be honest. Now that I'm seeing it, that makes me like C.J. Uzomah a little bit less. So now they're both low-end tight end 2s. Next down the list, we have DJ Chark to the Detroit Lions. I think that is a pretty significant one. We forget that a couple years ago, DJ Chark was a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy football. I'm not saying he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver with the Lions, but this is an interesting deal. They gave him a 1-year, $10 million deal, a prove-it deal, basically. And I like it. I feel like he might get sucked into their future as like their future wide receiver 2 with him and Amon-Ra. And it's interesting because I don't know if they're going to draft a wide receiver in the draft now because maybe they'll draft somebody in the later rounds, like the 2nd or 3rd. That's why I found this a little interesting because of that one fact right there. But maybe they'll draft a wide receiver in the 2nd or 3rd. I thought they were going to take somebody with that 132 that they had. But now they have a DJ Chark, who's a young wide receiver. I doubt that they're going to do that. And next up we have Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram to the Jags is a one that I really like. Evan Ingram is somebody who hasn't been that good. We kind of overhype him every year. And I'm going to overhype him again because I think he might be really good with Trevor Lawrence. Much better than he was with Daniel Jones. And he's going to be like a high-end tight end 2 for me, I think. I think he could jump into that tight end 1 conversation, maybe, with Trevor Lawrence, if Trevor Lawrence takes that next step, obviously. Next up, we have J.D. McKissic. J.D. McKissic isn't big in itself, but he has re-signed with Washington, and that is horrible for Antonio Gibson owners out there because now we know Antonio Gibson isn't going to get that third down work, and he's not going to be that bell cow running back that we wanted him to be. And it's a little irritating. It is a little irritating because J.D. McKissic was on the Bills for a couple hours, and then he went back to Washington. And so all these Antonio Gibson owners were, woo, going crazy, and then they got hit with this news. And so kind of sucks. J.D. McKissic's still going to be that RB3, that guy who, if you need to throw somebody in a pinch, you could throw J.D. McKissic in there. It hurts Antonio Gibson because I don't think Antonio Gibson has the capability of being a top 5 back now because of that. And yeah, it's not ideal. Next up, another big one that's kind of small is Teddy Bridgewater to the Dolphins. I feel like that's an interesting deal because I feel like Teddy Bridgewater and Tua might just have to compete. I feel like they might be competing for that quarterback position because I feel like the difference between the two isn't that much. And he's a really good backup to have. I'm a big Teddy Bridgewater guy. He's a Florida boy, Teddy Two Gloves. And it might be interesting. There might be a competition in that quarterback room. It might be something worth watching. Next up, we got O.J. Howard to Buffalo. That's a decent one. Somebody to put on the other side of Dawson Knox. I like that. It's just good for the team. And I think that about sums it up for the little signings. Scrolling down the list here. We got a bunch of O linemen that we could talk about, but I think that I got to hold that back for another episode. And yeah, that's about it for the yeah, small free agency guys. So the last thing I'm going to talk about for today is 2 trades. One that just went down and one that hasn't gone down quite yet. And we got to start off with Davante Adams to the Raiders. I was not expecting that at all. It is intense, insane, crazy, and what does it mean for fantasy football? What does it mean for fantasy football? That is the question we have to ask ourselves. Davante Adams, in my opinion, was the wide receiver 1, not by a long shot, but he was the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. But now that he's with Derek Carr, does that take down his value a little bit? Or does it boost it up a little bit? I don't know. I think it might stay the same just because, like, there's who else are they going to target on that team? They got Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller. And it's like the perfect amount of wide receivers to have like a little breathing room there. But it's definitely I think it's going to take a little hit on Davante Adams from moving from the MVP to Derek Carr. And Derek Carr's still a great quarterback who, if he puts it anywhere within Davante Adams' range, he's probably going to catch it. And I feel like it lowers Davante Adams' fantasy upside just a tad bit. But not that much. Not that much. I think he's still a top 5 wide receiver. I think we could still draft him in the first round of our drafts. Maybe not the beginning of the first round now, but definitely the back of the first round. And that if you're in a 10 team, that 10, 11 turn, or in a 12 team around there. Yeah. And I don't think it really hurt his value that much. I think the interesting side of this trade is the Aaron Rodgers side or the Green Bay side, I said Aaron Rodgers. The Green Bay side is the interesting side because they have a bunch of picks. And I think they're just going to start hitting on wide receivers. They have 2 first-round picks now. And I think they might just take 2 first-round wide receivers. They might take Jamison Williams and Chris Olave, pair them up together, or Treylon Burks. And so they might have a very interesting young wide receiver combo there. And I think this almost guarantees they're going to take a rookie wide receiver. And that, if you're in a dynasty league, listen to me right now. This is important. If you're in a dynasty league, and the Green Bay Packers draft one of these wide receivers like Treylon Burks, Jamison Williams, Chris Olave, and now Davante Adams is gone, draft them. They're going to be playing with the MVP for at least the next, I'm hoping 4 years. That would be nice. But hopefully the next 4 years they'll be playing with Aaron Rodgers. And so you could see immediate fantasy implications from that right out the gate. And yeah, I don't think it really affects anybody else. I don't think Aaron Rodgers even takes that big of a hit. This is really good for Amari Rodgers, though, somebody I was talking about way before in a couple episodes ago, and that is somebody you guys should be looking for to get in your leagues. Maybe he's on waivers. Go pick him up. But for fantasy football purposes, I don't think this is that big of a trade. I think Davante Adams' value goes down a little bit. Aaron Rodgers stays the same. Derek Carr is probably one of the biggest movers. His value comes up. Hunter Renfrow's value goes down slightly. I think Darren Waller's value goes up a little bit because now he has somebody to take away a little bit of that coverage on the team. And yeah, that's about it. It doesn't really have any that big fantasy implications, but kind of big, you know? So that is all I have for today's episode. I was going to talk about the DeShaun Watson trade, but it's Friday, March 18th at 11:24 a.m. He hasn't been traded yet. I am wrong. DeShaun Watson has now been traded. I'm sitting here on Sunday at 10:56 a.m. I made this video on Friday, so at the time he hadn't been traded yet. But now he is on the Cleveland Browns, and what does that mean for fantasy football? It means Amari Cooper is going to be a wide receiver 1 now, a low wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. And it means you should go out there and try and get Donovan Peoples-Jones, Anthony Schwartz, Harrison Bryant, all of those pass catchers on that team that could still be on waivers right now. Those are viable guys that you should be trying to get in your leagues, your dynasty leagues at least, because you're not in your regular leagues at the moment. But those are some people that you should be trying to get. And I was so sure DeShaun Watson was going to go to the Saints, but he went to the Browns, and I guess it's like a bit of a better situation because they have the running backs, they have the defense, they have a couple people in the wide receiver room. Maybe they'll draft another guy, but I was not expecting this. And for fantasy football purposes, I think it's probably the best place for him to end up. But that is all we have for today's episode. Please like and subscribe. Follow us on TikTok. I've been posting on there nonstop. I've been posting like crazy. I love it. It's great. I'm quick. I am so quick on this TikTok, and you should follow it. Please follow it. Push it away now. And you can follow us on Instagram as well. That is just post notifications, basically. That's telling you guys when I'm posting on YouTube and what's going on, what we're doing. And yeah, that's about it. Push that away. Whoop. And that is all I got. We are probably going to have to make another one of these episodes because we're going to have this DeShaun Watson trade happen in the next couple of days, and that is going to have some serious fantasy implications. And that is all I got for today. Thank you guys for watching the TCO Fantasy Football Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody.